Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Altitude Film Room, a playoff edition. Your Denver Broncos have, after a year of in-depth breakdown, with the eyes of Coach Sanford, I'm sure he's helped them along the way.
Oh, it really helped him. Yeah, it's really. I'm probably the biggest reason that the Broncos are in the postseason because I'm sure Sean Payton, Davis Webb, and VJ Vance Joseph have been watching my illustrious breakdowns of the All 22.
Not only here in the Altitude Film Room, but I heard they're big fans of the critically acclaimed Morning Sprint with you and Raj. So, no doubt about it. Consultant Mike Sanford, Coach Sanford, helped Broncos make the playoffs this year. Listen, you ended an 8-year streak the first year you're in Denver media. I think you deserve a little bit of credit.
Coincidence, Rob? I think not. It's a complete coincidence because I was working in a very inconsistent manner with Altitude during the majority of last year in the football season. So I do acknowledge that I have absolutely nothing to do with it. But I did notice something interesting when you were welcoming everybody from Altitude Film Room here. You said your Denver Broncos. And I just asked the question, why not all of ours, our Denver Broncos, like our being a plural, but yet personal pronoun, right? Our. Is that something that is there a reason, Rob, that you in this instance did choose to use your?
Well, Coach, I root for the Broncos. I hope they do well. I would never say I'm a fan because I don't think you can say you're a fan of multiple teams. I know.
Okay. I like the standards. I do.
Yeah. So
everybody knows. But if for somebody who's watching this for the first time, just let us know. Let us all know. We can't assume that everybody's going to tune into this over the course of the next week or so. They just know that Rob is Johnny Buffalo Bills.
I normally take down the Bills flag behind me and put up my Colorado flag, which I'm proud of. And I'm proud to be from the state.
It's pretty subdued right now, just so you know. It's fairly subdued. Move your head to the go. Yeah, she is. There she is. There's our guy. All right. So give it to us. Why the Bills fandom? Real quick.
I was born there, and my dad is from there, and it was just one of those things where, you pass it down from father to son, and there were different times when the Bills were talking about moving them to LA and getting rid of them altogether and so on and so forth. And when they were talking about that, for me, there's a real chance that I ended up being a Bronco fan because they were talking about getting rid of the Bills. So I have always had a special place in my heart for the Broncos. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe put your hand over the camera, Coach.
There we go. We're better now. I think it's because I was moving around too much.
But there's a time that I, thought maybe I was going to end up as a Broncos fan one day because the Bills wouldn't exist anymore. But, you heard me today on with PhD. They grilled me a little bit about being a Bills fan. And I would just rather be the guy who stayed loyal and stayed true and then maybe gets a payoff one day than be the guy who just constantly changes teams because somebody else, I'm in a different market or whatever. Right. So I've always been a Bills fan,
for me, for me, the NFL is such a strange rooting interest because of my dad was a coach. And, my dad grew up in the Bay Area. So he passed down the 49ers as a, general fan, team to root for. But I grew up in Southern California. The majority of my time in Southern California, the Raiders shared a stadium with my dad's, USC Trojans that I'd go to, games for both the USC games on Saturday and Raiders games at the Coliseum on Sunday. And then the weirdest thing for me is that my dad ended up getting a coaching job in the National Football League with the San Diego Chargers. So at the time, who's the team that I root for? And the only team I give a flying F about is the San Diego Chargers. Well, as history does typically go. My dad worked for a guy named Mike Riley in the 3-year stint of the San Diego Chargers. And the San Diego Chargers fired Mike Riley after 3 seasons and fired my dad. So I hate the Chargers. So I've never really had an NFL team to really understand the tie to, because I don't really have a place that I call home, man. Now, the one thing I do really understand, and to paint the picture of this Broncos Bills, from a fandom standpoint, for me, it would be the San Francisco Giants. So for all the different moves that I've had, all the different places I've been, my dad took me as a young child to his hometown, showed me where he grew up and was recruiting. And he actually, kind of like brought me along to all the high schools he was recruiting in the Bay Area. We went to Oakland and went to Skyline High School in Oakland, left me out in the parking lot, which was awesome, just kind of training day vibes. And that night we went to San Francisco Giants baseball game at the old Candlestick Park. And since that moment, they're the only team in any sport that I just so thick. If the Rockies and Giants were playing in an NLCS, I wouldn't be trying to fake the funk at all on Altitude Sports Radio. I mean, I would be repping hard. And that we all know that also would never happen because neither team spends money anymore. So I think we're safe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to worry about the Rockies. It's just if they hit on like 10 draft picks, maybe. But to your point, too,
they'll be gone by the time they can make a tournament, Yeah.
If one of your guys ends up as a head coach at the NFL level and calls you and says, hey, man, I want you to be quarterbacks coach for the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like you still also have to separate that, too, because you always just have to be open to the fact that you're going to be working for some other team, So
no doubt.
I get that you haven't dug in quite the same way with football as you
fandom
had.
Fandom.
The
fandom piece is tough. Like one of the biggest during the era I was coaching at Sanford, 2011, 12, 13, and then I was there before 07 and 08 with Jim Harbaugh and then David Shaw for the last 3 years. Our biggest rivalry in recruiting, and frankly, the end of the year in terms of like relevance of going to a potential CFP, it went through Notre Dame. And so my last year coaching at Stanford was 2013, go to Boise State in 2014 in my alma mater. And I left Boise State to be the offense coordinator at Notre Dame. I mean, I was like called Benedict Arnold, like on the sideline, by the Stanford marching band, who was high out of their mind, of course. But I mean, that's kind of how it goes, man. My dad left USC. My dad's an alum of SC. My mom went to SC. I was a ball boy for SC. The very next year in 97, we're in 98 on the sideline. I'm a ball boy at Notre Dame. And I get to see the USC band marching by my dad and chanting Benedict Arnold, like same shit. Like it's just wild.
Yeah. Well, but what's interesting about it for me is your kids are in those formative years where they're going to make some fandoms for life here. And maybe they turn into a coach like you and they have to kind of, play it as it goes. But maybe they just turn into, I mean, I saw him in a Bo Nix shirt, one of your boys in a Bo Nix shirt the other night. Maybe they just turn into Bronco fans and then they're Bronco fans for life. And I think that would make you a stronger Bronco fan too. I don't know. It's just interesting the way it kind of goes by generation.
No, it's a real thing. But, I think my kids, the coolest thing for my journey is going from coach to fan and then from fan to media, which is kind of what happened for me. Is after the 22 season, the very first game that we went to, and frankly, one of the first games I've been to as a fan outside of the typical summer vacation, you go to a Rockies or, a Major League Baseball game with no rooting interest whatsoever, right? You show up and it's just about the glizzy and the cold beer. That's kind of why you go. But we went to a Nuggets game in the 22-23 run. And our first game was January of 23, which started the unbelievable trend towards a championship. And that really sunk our talons in as a family. And the Nuggets became our first fan base of real deep passion here in the Denver market. And then it went on to the Avs a little bit. That's gotten a little thicker because my daughter loves the Avs. Like that's the sporting event she lives for. And then my youngest boy just loves the Broncos, loves pro football, loves Bo Nix. He didn't listen to all of his dad's incorrect takes on Bo Nix from the combine. And he was right, man. My 8-year-old son knows more ball than I do. He bought the jersey before even a regular season contest. So we're there.
Wow. All right. So you're building that fandom for life, and it just happens to be here in Denver. So, they might turn into those guys.
Life's weird.
We want to, so listen, just for everybody who's watched this more than once, we think kind of showing you clips of the Chiefs game is kind of pointless, right? I mean,
it is what it is. It was awesome.
I mean, it was awesome, but it's not going to help you this week that much. So instead of going back, we're going to go forward and really break it down, this matchup between these two teams. And let's start there, Coach. Let's start with Bo Nix, who, on a little bit of a heater now coming in. He played okay against Cincinnati. He played really well the week before that. What was that?
Chargers.
Great half versus the Chargers.
Yeah,
right? First half.
Great half. Weird. Just so strange second half, right?
Yeah.
Against the Chargers. And same thing with Cincinnati. Would you agree that it was a bit uneven? Like there were some really good positives to it all. First half was good. Then it kind of hit a lull until the fourth quarter come from behind drive or, to tie it up.
Yeah, it was really a roller coaster because you got so high on that last drive to tie the game up.
And then overtime was 3-and-out fest.
But I think, and we haven't gotten a chance to talk about this, just me and you, so I'm interested in your take. How much do you think it deflated him not going for two?
A lot.
I don't know if it was his coach in his ear saying go for two. I think maybe he was holding it up saying, I want to go for two. You know what I mean? And
he did.
And coach pulled him off the field. And I feel like that 2, 3-and-outs in overtime, I felt like he was kind of deflated a little bit.
I haven't had a chance to really break this down. And part of it is because I was working during that Bengals Broncos game. I was doing the Snoop Dogg Bowl. So my like.
Did you get your gin and juice? I just have to know. Did you?
I didn't. I did not. I saw it though, and I got some photo. I got some. Yeah, I should have, but then I would have been calling a broadcast under the influence of gin and juice, which probably would have helped actually, but we won't get into that. Man, it's an interesting thing, and I thought about this. Okay, so Bo Nix in back-to-back weeks. Week 16, week 17 against the Chargers on the road and the Bengals on the road, respectively. Had an opportunity to kind of do something that he had an opportunity to do in his college career at Oregon, which was to get to that, get to the step that you need to get to. And if I'm not mistaken, at Oregon, he missed out on the opportunity to play in a Pac-12 championship in back-to-back years. Correct? So because 2022, my final year at CU, it was Utah versus USC. And I can't remember how it all shook out in terms of who Oregon lost to. But the one that stands out very, very, I think it was Washington. Didn't they lose to Washington?
So they were 12-2, and I think lost to Washington.
So that was a Penix game, right?
Season, I can pull that up, and then they were 10-3 the year before that.
In what year? 21?
No, 20. That would be 23 and 22.
So 22. 22. They had a chance. They were like in the contention to play for. I think if they had beaten Washington in 22 towards the tail end of the year.
Yeah, it was Washington, and they did make the Pac-12 championship game that year, but they lost to Washington in the Pac-12.
That was 23. That was Bo Nix's final year. I thought so. Starting in 22, it was a loss again in regular season play against Washington that eliminated Oregon from the Pac-12 championship.
So it wasn't Washington; it was Oregon State. It was Oregon State
wow.
was ranked 22 that year. So
okay.
The second to last game of the year was Oregon Utah, and they beat Utah 20-17. The last game of the year was the Civil War. And
Oregon State.
At Oregon State.
Who had won the Washington Oregon game that year earlier in the season in 22?
Washington had won.
Yes. Okay. So the reason I keep bringing up Washington is there were some pretty incredible duels between Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. Started in 22. Oregon did not make it to the Pac-12 championship that year. And then now into 23, there was a regular season duel that frankly probably, for all intents and purposes, eliminated Oregon unless they won out from playing in the college football playoff. Correct? But
so Michael Penix that day, to your point, Michael Penix, 26 of 35, a 74.3 completion percentage, 408 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick.
Yeah.
In that.
What did Bo Nix do that day?
He was 18 of 28, 67.9 completion percentage, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no
solid day.
Yeah.
And then the Pac-12, it's so hard these conferences have changed, but the Pac-12 championship game that year was the de facto Washington versus Oregon. Winner really probably gets into the CFP.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were 5-3 at the time. Oregon was ranked 5th and Washington.
There it is. Okay. So here's an example. Do you remember what happened in that in kind of both of those games? Remember Lanning chose field goals instead of going for it?
I do remember that. Yeah.
And it was like he chose the conservative route. And I feel like this was an opportunity for Bo Nix, who's been plagued in his college career, and maybe the perception of who he is has been altered because he never beat Penix. 0-3 against Michael Penix Jr. in college. And at least, and I'm not going to put it all on Dan Lanning, but there were some non-aggressive decisions that were made, in my opinion. Or maybe it was the other way around, and he might have kicked. I think it was that he kicked a field goal and they missed it, and Bo Nix wanted to stay on the field and go for it on a fourth down. So that might have been the regular season game in at UW.
Yeah, because they got a couple touchdowns late. I'm looking at it. I don't see a moment in the scoring summary where that might have been the regular season.
I think it was the regular season game. The point being, I think Bo Nix wanted to put an end to this, especially against he had an opportunity against Herbert. He's had 2 chances against his Oregon predecessor. That is going to be a divisional conversation in terms of supremacy after Mahomes, right? And right now it belongs to Justin Herbert in the Chargers. Then you have a chance to do it against Joe Burrow on the road in a team that you were directly facing for, the pole position to frankly close it out. And I think Bo Nix is like, screw this, man. I have the ball in my hands, a chance to go for 2, end this thing. And indeed, it was Sean Payton that decided to kick the extra point. He actually looked like a genius for a second because you keep Joe Burrow out of the end zone somehow, some way on the first drive. But then you don't look like a genius because your offense goes three and out 2 different times in overtime. So against a defense that's no good, frankly.
And he said somebody was in his ear telling him that a tie is just as good. And I understand we're talking about making the playoffs, but I think you got to feel your team a little bit there too. And you're a head coach, so you tell me. But I think you got to feel your team a little bit there too. There's something to going and taking that playoff spot rather than, tying your way into it or whatever. And I get that a tie is just the same, but go win it. You know what I mean? So I felt like he was a little deflated after that, but let's talk
about this matchup now. Okay. With Bo Nix in particular. I think, Rob, you watched just like you watch every one of the Broncos game. You've watched the entirety of both of the seasons of the Bills and the Broncos. Fairly confident to say that's the case. Highly confident, actually. So if you look at Bo Nix's year, the first thing that just blows my mind, okay, is Josh Allen has had this great season, right? How in God's green earth does Bo Nix have more touchdown passes than Josh Allen? I'll start there.
Bring that up. I knew you were going to bring that up.
Well, you told me that you have counterpoints for everything that I'm going to bring up, so I'm ready for it.
I thought we were going to talk matchups first. I thought we were going to get into Josh Allen later, but we can get into it now if you want.
I got to figure out my damn. Let's see here. There you go. Yep. There you go.
All right. So, listen. Let's start with this. Final snap counts for the NFL Big Three after the year is over. Joe Burrow had 1,132 snaps this year. Lamar Jackson had 1,074 snaps this year. Josh Allen, you want to guess how many snaps he had?
997, something like that.
968.
Why is that?
Because they got up so much that he was sitting it a lot in fourth quarters.
Okay.
And so if you just look at raw numbers, they might.
So this is kind of the Ashton Genty Heisman. This is the Ashton Genty that they were up and he didn't play entire second halves against Portland State and
a little bit. Yeah. I mean, listen, if you just look at raw numbers and if you want to get into, it's not only is it like the Ashton Genty thing because of that, but it's also like the Saquon Barkley thing, right? Like,
right.
Let's, instead of looking at the raw numbers, split it up based on drives or games or anything like that. They're tied for the longest 30-plus point streak in NFL history. It was 8 games. They're tied with the 2007 Patriots. Okay? They're averaging over 3 points a drive when Josh Allen is their quarterback. It's historical when it comes to NFL numbers. When you hammer down into like per game or per drive, they're incredibly efficient. And so if you look at raw numbers, yeah, you can say, Bo Nix has one more touchdown pass than Josh Allen this year. Josh Allen is also, I think, third in the NFL in rushing touchdowns, and for the fifth straight year has scored over 40 touchdowns, which no one's ever done before.
Right. So Josh Allen, and I think he might be second in rushing touchdowns at the quarterback position. Is that right? Jalen Hurts first with 14, and
sure Josh was first, but I can look.
No, Jalen Hurts has 14. Josh has 12, right?
I thought he had 15
rushing. Here, I got a pretty good stat here. Let's see. Let's go 20.
And I know everybody says, "Oh, the 1 yard QB sneak merchant," but it's
that's also Jalen Hurts.
Well, but also if you watch him play, like there are plenty of long touchdown runs, and the one that I can point to that I know everybody knows is against the Chiefs on 4th and 2, and he runs it 30 yards for a touchdown.
Oh, you're okay.
Right.
So here's
Hurts with 14, Josh with 12.
Okay. Yeah. Just so from a statistical perspective, and this is why I was just confused on the kind of the run. It felt like a lot of people were talking runaway Josh Allen MVP this year. Dude, I think like Lamar Jackson's been unfreaking believable this year. And his passing numbers are off the charts. But the thing about Josh Allen is right now 5th in the National Football League in rushing yards. So he is just around slightly less than, he's 380 yards shy of Lamar Jackson's 915. He's got a total of 531. He does have the touchdowns just behind. It's funny, Lamar Jackson he's thrown for a ton. He's only ran for 4. They don't run QB sneak with Lamar Jackson, probably very intelligently. And then Jaden Daniels is second with almost 900 yards rushing. Jalen Hurts is third with 630. Kyler Murray 4th. And then you know who's 8th in the National Football League with just 100 yards less rushing than Josh Allen? It's Bo Nix.
Okay.
It's Bo Nix.
And so, but
he's 8th. Bo Nix is 8th in the National Football League in rushing the football. And in terms of touchdowns, he's got 4 himself, right? So he doesn't have the 12 that Josh Allen has, but he's leading in the passing touchdown by what, 3 or 4? Josh Allen at 26.
Josh Allen had 28 passing and 12 rushing, and then 1 receiving.
That's right. Yeah, that was awesome. That was an amazing play. Okay, so let me just double check. We're statting right now. Yep. Josh Allen has 28, 100% right. Okay, so Bo Nix has him by 1.
So so this is not this year. This is last year. But I just wonder, did you have Josh Allen as your MVP last year? Because if you look at the stats for last year,
way more dominant. Way more dominant.
Here's Josh Allen leading in yards by a whole lot, in passing yards per game by a whole lot. He's leading in passing touchdowns. He's crushing in rushing touchdowns. And yet,
and to be clear, this is last season, correct?
This is last season.
Yep.
And so to all the people who are saying, let's put up the raw stats and say Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen, and
the raw stats pointed to the opposite a year ago.
Right. And that's not how you decide MVP. So I just want to start there, right? Are we just deciding based on raw stats? Well, if so, Josh should have been the MVP last year. Mm-hmm. And if we're not deciding based on raw stats, if things like your record matters and who's on your team and all of that, then Josh has, I think, a great MVP case and I don't know where you were on it at the beginning of the year, Coach, but a lot of the people across the media landscape were down on the Bills. No Gabe Davis, no Stephon Diggs.
Oh yeah, coming in, it looked like it was going to be a train wreck. You're exactly right.
Everybody's picking the Jets or the Dolphins to finally win the division and Josh to fall off.
Yeah, so, no, I was in that camp, man. I had my questions.
When you have a 1,900-yard rusher with Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers, 1,000-yard receiver, James Cook just barely got over 1,000 yards. They actually made it a point to try to get him over 1,000 yards in that week 17 or week 18 game. If he hadn't, Josh Allen would have been the stats would have been crazy because he would have been the first guy to do all these different things without a 1,000-yard receiver or a 1,000-yard rusher. And they
All right,
just
so
barely got Cook over it, and it changed a whole bunch of that. But
one more. So this has been my take, and I wrote about it in the Denver Gazette. It's printed this morning. Is the elite nature of what Josh Allen has been this season? Take 23 out. Let's not even talk about 23. Is less about what statistically he's done this year. It's been about, and this is coming from the coach in me, it's been about what he hasn't done this year. And that's he hasn't turned the football over.
Sure.
And for the volume that he is their offense, both as a runner, as a thrower, the dude just doesn't turn the football over. And then the other thing he doesn't do is he doesn't get sacked. 14 sacks on the year. 14. 16 game starter. He has fewer sacks in his 16 games started than Dak Prescott had in his 8.
And
fewer sacks than go ahead.
I think a lot of credit for that goes to Joe Brady. He's been giving him a lot of answers.
Yeah, a lot of RPO.
His completion percentage isn't necessarily astounding, but there has been more chance. He's always going to have a tough completion percentage because he's always going to extend the play, and try to hit somebody down the field. And so it really hurts his completion percentage. But a lot of the times when he's getting blitzed, he does have answers. And that wasn't necessarily true in the Ken Dorsey era, which I think makes a big difference for him.
It's interesting because his completion percentage in the National Football League is 24th, which you can have a lot of things that account with that. But looking at CPOE, which I put a little bit of stock into, which is completion percentage over expected, he stays right where he's at, which is 23rd. He's negative 0.3%. So he is basically right on par with his completion percentage over expected, which ironically, guess who's number one in that statistical category in the National Football League? Completion percentage over expected.
Yes.
Who?
Bo?
No, Bo's actually horrific on that. It's like, that's literally Bo is 32nd in the National Football League. So what Sean Payton has schemed up for Bo Nix, he is delivered at a negative 2.4%. So his completion percentage of 66.3% based off of history of how open a guy is and how often that pass has been completed in NFL, modern statistical and analytical era. Bo should be a 68.7% completion percentage guy if he didn't do anything phenomenal. Number one in the NFL is actually, it's crazy. This is going to blow your mind. Jalen Hurts.
Really?
Yeah, he's got the highest completion percentage over expected. Meaning like what was schemed for Jalen Hurts, he is 6.6% better than what was open.
Well, and I think maybe that goes a little bit to what I think you're going to spend a lot of time talking about in the offseason, which is who's Jalen Hurts thrown to?
No, you're right.
Right. Like the weapons are incredible. And
yes.
I think they can help you make
some
catches.
That takes a huge piece of the puzzle. Yep. And number 2 in CPOE is Joe Burrow. 3 is Jared Goff. So you're in good company. These guys are all,
weapons too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Quarterback play. But I was a little bit surprised to hear you talk bad about Khalil Shakir on the radio today.
Well, no, and I love Khalil Shakir. He's had an awesome year. He's a Boise State Bronco. He's like the quintessential. But I was when I was talking about it, I was talking more about a lot of the challenges that the Broncos secondary has had this year has been one of two things. Number one, Riley Moss has either been injured or coming back from injury. So the Batman and Robin of Riley Moss and PS2 backwards. Batman is definitely PS2.
We all know right. Batman is.
Yeah. And and then Jaquan McMillan, Brandon Jones is a good cover safety. PJ Locke is a good cover safety. These guys, I think when you've had bona fide one, like a bona fide number one receiver, PS2's got him. When you got like kind of two, like the T Higgins, Jamar Chase situation, and you had a banged up Riley Moss, no bueno. And I just look at it like, okay, who are the matchup issues for the Broncos secondary? What's going to tell Vance Joseph that I'm not going to take my league leading 295 pressures on the season, quarterback pressures. I could check that stat at this point. Who really cares? But I know this, and a league leading 63 sacks, and the next closest team is 10 off of that number.
So I really want your take on this, because I think you're right. As far as the defensive line matchup goes, it might be the best defensive line the Bills offense has seen all year.
Would you agree that it's probably the most deep, right? Like there's the most problems across the board.
And their offense, listen, give Aaron Kromer a ton of credit. The Bills offensive line has played really, really well.
He's a good coach, man.
Year after year, he is a great
coach. And that's a Sean Payton guy, a Saints guy.
Yeah. So I give him a ton of credit. He has developed a few guys on that offensive line to Pro Bowl type players. But getting to Josh is only half the battle. And I tweeted this out, right? You can win your one-on-one matchup. You can scheme pressure, simulate pressure, however Vance wants to do it. But then you got to get Josh to the ground. And that is the harder thing to do. If I'm talking about your matchup problems, in my eyes, there's only one team in the NFL that attacks the middle of the field better than the Bills do, and that's the Ravens. And you saw how many problems you had with the Ravens. So I think it's a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't for Vance Joseph, because if he plays his man schemes, James Cook out of the backfield, Ty Johnson out of the backfield, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and Khalil Shakir are going to attack the middle of the field and going to eat your lunch, I think.
Let's have a real X's and O's conversation. I don't mean to interrupt you, because I agree. The Broncos have been dead dog average at defending the middle of the field. When they're playing their shitty cover 2, which is awful. It is a bad cover 2. And if the Broncos play a high percentage of middle field open, soft zone, Josh Allen will throw for 4 Bills and they'll get their balls kicked in. It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
But what is cover 1? It's middle of the field closed. The reason you play cover 1 is to put a safety at 12 yards, play outside leverage, and filter everything back into that middle field safety. That's the shit I don't understand. And I hear people say that you're going to attack the middle of the field. Yeah, if they play zone like idiots, like they did against Joe Burrow, like they did against Justin Herbert. Yeah. And I don't know where that's coming from. I don't think that's Vance Joseph.
I can't name one time this year that their zone coverage has looked good.
It sucks. It blows. You know why? You know why it sucks is because that's not like when you do something. I've been a play caller in an offense that wasn't me, that wasn't my personality. I got hired and then they told me you were running your offense, and then you go in with an offensive staff that's been together for 10 years. And the head coach says, "Hey, teach this guy the offense. He's going to call it." What? Yeah. That's what I feel like when Vance Joseph is playing a higher percentage of zone coverage. It's like the carpet does not match the drapes, right?
So but then where does that conversation lead you? It leads you back to man coverage. And why did the Ravens end up having so much success for you?
Because he played a shit ton of zone.
Because you switched to zone because you didn't want to play man against
a running quarterback. Yep.
And that's exactly.
And it sucked. And it was not good. And you took away
himself, but you don't think Josh is going to eat him alive with the QB run game then?
I mean, if you look at the numbers, Josh gets you hard yards. Josh gets you ugly yards. Josh get you I love the kind of yards that he gives you, particularly in the red zone. Right? That's when you keep the chains moving, and he does that because he's so physical. He doesn't give you the Lamar Jackson your asshole puckers up when you see Lamar Jackson take off with any form of space. You don't get that same feeling with Josh Allen, right?
No, but what you don't run with Lamar Jackson is QB powers and count QB.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? And so if you go back and you look at the Detroit game for the Bills, man, there was like 6 different times that they ran a QB counter, and there were like 4 different wrinkles off it. One was Khalil Shakir coming across and he pops the ball to him to get him into the end zone. One is him just following, and Deion Dawkins didn't even have anybody to block. He was a counter tackle pull all the way across. Didn't even have anybody to block. It was so wide open.
Yeah, I see. You're talking my language here, and it's hard for me to talk negatively about anything involving the quarterback counter, quarterback power, quarterback. Like I love all the insert stuff because you gain a hat. But I will say this: I've called that offense, for a majority of my career. Red zone in particular is where I loved using quarterback driven run game, using the counters, the powers, hard misdirection, and then you run counter away. The GT counter, the GY counter, things along those lines.
I mean, they also run duo. They also run ISO. You know what I mean? Like
with Josh.
Sometimes with Josh, but what I'm saying is when you
I was gonna say Q duo, man, that's some big ball shit right there.
When you no, but when you're hammering away with counters and traps and stuff like that, and then you can just hand it to James Cook on a duo play.
I love James Cook's a baller, man.
The offensive line is huge, man. I mean, Spencer Brown's 6'8", Osiris Torrance is like 6'5", almost 350. You know what I mean? Like these guys
are thick graders.
Massive.
Yep.
So that play after play, what they do is they wear you down, and then all of a sudden you switch to his own defense, and Josh just eats you for lunch.
Here's what I'd say. With Josh Allen being a little bit less of a scares you to death as a finds a crease and goes for 70, right? That's Lamar Jackson, a little bit of Kyler. I'd say Jaden Daniels has that, you find a crease and you're like, oh God, he can do that. I'm not saying that Josh Allen can't do that, because he's a very effective runner of the football. But the style of play that Josh Allen I think, is you play tightly contested man coverage. You do a combination of junking up the fronts with, running bare fronts, which is, the core is covered. I'm not talking to you, that, but 303 fronts and games and twists. When you do a lot of that stuff, and you have an extra hat in the box as a play caller, you don't love your quarterback running into those looks. It's junk. It's ugly. And for the Bills, their goal is Super Bowl, and their only chance is Josh Allen, right? So how much are you willing to really lean into that?
And he's got a kill on that, coach. You know what I mean? And that's the thing is,
but what's your kill?
Joe Brady has given him answers this year.
What's his kill? To throw the ball, to run mesh, run. If you don't like the look,
honestly, this is where Khalil Shakir has made his money. Is then you would go with some sort of wide receiver screen, right? If you want to put that many guys down in the box, he just throws it out quick, and that's their running game. You know what I mean? And that's
so I'm talking about press man coverage, like what the Broncos have done. When the Broncos have looked the best, press man coverage, you can't throw a quick. The smoke screen is dead. You can't throw a smoke screen against press man unless you're moving the guy. You have to dial it up. You have to dial it up.
In bunch, though, and like you said, crossing routes and mesh, right?
Mesh, for sure.
They'll put their running back out in that bunch. Mm-hmm. They'll run a tight end across, a deep crosser with a wide receiver, and the back just right out of the bunch, and all of a sudden Ty Johnson's open for a 40-yard catch in a Detroit game, and you're like, who is Ty Johnson, and why is he catching balls from a wide receiver position? And I think a lot of teams don't have the balls to play man against them, but that's what they've done to it. I mean, they ate the Lions alive when they tried to play man. And, to be fair, I think Nick Bonito, inserted himself in the argument for your best defensive player if you're a Bronco fan. But Pat Surtain's your best defensive player. And I think in this game, he unfortunately is just not very valuable to you. Because what are you going to do? Take away?
Did you hear Orlowski today?
No, I didn't hear what he said.
He actually, I just listened to it before we started this. He said that he thinks that the reason the Broncos are going to neutralize what Brady likes to do is that essentially the majority of Brady's first and second and third and kind of medium to short offense is to get in some addition of quads to one side. So whether it be a running back in shotgun offset in the shotgun, and then three receivers, whether it's bunch, whether it's true three wides, whether it be two tight ends and a receiver, but give a quad situation over to the field side, single up the boundary, give a very simple ass completion. If it's free access, meaning the corners 6 yards or greater off, you throw a hitch, a slant, a quick out, and you're doing it with a run call, right? This is like standard ass 10-year ago offensive football. Call inside zone or duo or counter. You have a free access opportunity to the boundary. If he sees cover one, then he can signal to a slant or a go route to the single receiver. So PS2 is going to be on that side. And that most likely would be Khalil Shakir as the X, right? Or would that be?
It would.
Oh, Amari's apparently practiced today.
I was going to say Amari Cooper, I think, is going to play. I think there's a possibility that they do send Surtain with Shakir, because I think Jaquan McMillan versus Shakir is a win matchup for the Bills. Mm-hmm. So I do think that's a possibility. But yeah, it should be Cooper at the X position, singled up on the side like that.
Right. And so then the thought is that, so this is what Orlovsky said, is that PS2 is not only he's going to allow you to add another defender to the box, because it's not going to be a combo coverage to the single receiver side. No cloud, no need for help. So it's just PS2 just taking away that single receiver. And then to the field, there's always some type of quick answer, whether it's like an in and out beater versus man with like some type of rub concept. Obviously a standard ass bubble, like you said, a quick screen, or flare out the running back. And then if it's just, if you have cloud coverage on both sides, you run the football, is what basically it looks like. Too high, you run the football. So right. My point being, and I agree with Orlovsky, you kind of opened my eyes. If it's Amari Cooper, I think that's who PS2 stays with, just by reputation, right? And it allows PS2 to not have to travel slot, be playing Khalil Shakir, who's a good player. I love him. I coached against him when I was at Utah State. He's awesome. But he's not the reputation of and physical attributes maybe of him and Amari Cooper historically. Would you agree?
Yeah. Listen, if you're just going on reputation, I mean, it's Amari Cooper, but one of the big advantages you have with Surtain is that you can erase a Jamar Chase. You know what I mean? And that was a great battle that they had that day. But like, you don't have that guy for Buffalo that if you take him away, you change the way they run their offense. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. You know what I mean? And I don't know. That just kind of goes back to me thinking Joe Brady's going to have answers if you do that. And if the answer is running the ball for the first time in 5 years, I think everybody agrees that this Bills team can run the ball.
No, yeah.
That used to be one of their weaknesses,
My point being on the running the ball, though, is if Vance Joseph does what I think he should do and doesn't abandon it, which is what I thought he was going to do going into the Chargers, is play a heavy box population front. The problem with it is you and I both know, you play linebacker and you played fullback, tight end, running back in your career. The problem with man coverage is that if you start getting big, playing with 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, and you call some gap schemes like power and counter, you can crease it. If you're hard-headed enough to call those runs, you can crease it, because fitting the run out of man coverage schemes has its downsides. Like, yeah. It's not as clean.
Coach, and they'll have the advantage of seeing the personnel and being able to match up and call what they want. But I don't know if you know this, but Bills ran more 6 offensive linemen than I think any team in the NFL this year. They love bringing in a 6th offensive lineman and just saying, hey, guess what? We're going to hammer here for a little bit.
See the Chargers.
Yeah, right. And then we've got options off that because our quarterback is a freak.
And I think honestly, like, granted, Josh Allen, the recent trajectory of his career has him clearly above Justin Herbert. But in terms of like talent, and now the Harbaugh edition of the Chargers, the best comp of game is probably the Chargers offensively versus the Broncos defensively. And I think for 2 quarters, I thought Vance Joseph did a really good job, but he got away from some of the box population and pressure because he got creased on an early power or counter out of a big personnel set. And it was like a 13-yard run. It wasn't an 80-yard touchdown. And I think it just got him out of it. It's like, yeah, here we go again, playing gap schemes, heavy front. They're gonna crease our gap scheme or our bare front for a 15-yard gain. And then all of a sudden, now Justin Herbert against zone coverage can absolutely obliterate.
Too high shell, yeah.
I think that Vance Joseph, and this is my altitude film room assessment, he needs to be the most stubborn version of himself that he's ever been. And if Sean Payton says, I told you, you can't play that. You can't play man versus all their looks. Yeah, if I'm Vance Joseph, I'm double barreling Sean. And I'm like, no, what got us here is what the hell we did on this side of the ball for the majority of the season. All right. You got me. That's what I'm doing.
Well, and on the outsides, matchup wise, Surtan's a win against Cooper, and I like Riley Moss against Keon Coleman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think he's gritty enough. Keon Coleman's not a separator. He's not going to run away from Riley Moss. Riley Moss
is a separator in terms of post-game interviews and stuff, but he's hilarious. I love him. I love the guy.
He is awesome, but he's not going to run away from anybody. You know what I mean?
He's big, right? 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
6'3", 6'4".
And he's a solid route runner, and he will make contested catches, but Riley Moss will get in there and grit with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's done well. Riley Moss has done well. He's actually been in position versus just about everybody he's played against. The game where his worst game was the Bengals game, obviously. But, dude, he was in position in a lot of those opportunities. Joe Burrow was just elite with his ball placement.
Well, and that's why, to me, I don't think the outside receivers are much of a thing. And if you want to force Josh to go there, you can by playing, coverages that, close the middle of the field. But I think he's going to find a way. Joe Brady is going to find a way to scheme open backs out of the backfield.
Yeah, I agree.
Tight ends. And it's just, you're not going to force him to throw to those bad matchups. And I think those are the two real bad matchups. All the other matchups across the board, I think the Bills have a slight advantage. And it's kind of weird to say with as good of a defense as the Broncos have, but Shakir versus McMillan, either Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid versus Cody Barton,
PJ Locke or Brandon Jones. Yeah. Those two tight ends are, that's a real problem. I will say, though, I think the Broncos have done well this year versus tight ends. I mean, Brock Bowers didn't eat in either game versus I guess he did early on again in the first game against the Broncos. He had that big explosive kind of he made a crazy catch for, I think it was a touchdown. Oh, he kind of he climbed PJ Locke's back and took it to the crib. But yeah,
for me, it's all about game script. And that's what this entire game is about.
Probably both sides, right?
Versus the Ravens, the Bills versus the Texans, or the Bills versus the Rams. Those are their 3 losses on the year. And what happened in all of them? The Bills got down early. If you can make a special teams play, if you can turn over Josh Allen, do something like that, and you force the Bills to play offense the way you want them to play offense, then you got a shot.
Yeah.
But if you let them have these multiple options where they can run the ball, kill something, go to a bubble screen. You know what I mean? Joe Brady, I think, is a great coordinator, and he's going to have answers for it.
He's an interesting one because he was the genius of all geniuses in 2019. Yeah. I coached against him.
He had Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and then where was his next stop? It was really bad. He got fired. Carolina. Yeah, but everybody's been terrible there. So yeah, and he's done a nice job. He's done a really nice job.
I think it's about both coaches on both sides of the ball for the Broncos staying stubborn. You talked about Vance Joseph staying stubborn, staying in what they play well. Real quick, let's flip to the other side of the ball because we haven't talked a lot about it last 10 minutes here. Let's talk about it because, listen, the Bills, I think, again, if you look at game script, the Ravens pounded away at the Bills running the ball because they were up and they could run the football. You can't let the Bills get ahead by a couple scores. But I really think Sean Payton needs to run the ball and stick with the running game. They have undersized defensive tackles. They have undersized linebackers.
Tell me,
aren't great.
Give me a scouting report on the Bills defense. I think it's the area of this game that is talked about the least, at least from a Broncos centric media perspective. Tell me about who, because I actually, the stats aren't phenomenal, but they're not bad. Right.
Yeah.
I buzzed the tape. They do some kind of weird thing. Who's the defensive coordinator? They do some weird, coverage stuff. It looks like cover 4, but it's a lot of man principles.
They absolutely disguise their coverages better than anybody in the league. It's been a hallmark of Sean McDermott since back when he was.
So it's McDermott calls the D.
So he used to call the D. They've got a first-time coordinator in his first year coordinating, Bobby Babich.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Defensive coordinator right now, but you can see McDermott's fingerprints all over it. He's absolutely a McDermott protege, and no doubt McDermott's in there helping with the game plans. You know what I mean?
There's some interesting things. I don't know, as a Bills fan. So you show a 2-shell. It looks, smells, and breathes like zone coverage. And then you see a cross motion, and you see like the field nickel completely change sides, and they'll go play into the boundary as the will in the boundary, like was a nickel or dime player run across. And I'm like, holy shit, how do these guys do this? Like, does it not freak you out as a Bills fan when it looks like a Chinese fire drill, which is probably it's just a crazy, like, it doesn't make any sense at the snap at times.
Well, and so Taron Johnson is their nickel corner, but they play basically exclusively nickel. So he's also their will linebacker and does a heck of a job as a cornerback, fitting the run and being tough to play against, allowing them to disguise a bunch of these coverages with their safeties and their corners and so on and so forth.
It's almost like they want to disguise until they can't. Like, they absolutely can't, right? Yep.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think there's anybody better in the NFL right now at confusing rookie quarterbacks. And I think that's going to be a big thing for Bo Nix, is can he figure out what the coverage is pre-snap? I don't think he's going to be able to do it. He's going to have to read it out really quickly. And that's the advantage that the Bills have. Listen, they're a bend, don't break defense. They're designed to stop the pass and not the run. And so that's why I think Sean Payton's got to be thinking, I need to run the football.
Just don't put it on your call sheet, because we saw how that went.
Yeah, we did. But I'm just saying, if you run the ball, I think you create opportunities for your passing game on your terms rather than your passing game on their terms. And that's what I mean when I say game script's going to be really important.
Agreed.
If you're passing, trying to get back into the game, the Bills are going to give you confusing looks, and that bend don't break defense is going to turn into a turnover machine because, like you said, Coach, somebody's dropping out or playing coverage in a way that you're not expecting, and that's how they get their turnovers.
Let me ask you this. So when you look at their overall defensive structure, they have active linebackers. Would you agree with that? Not big.
Great pass coverage linebackers.
Yeah, very active.
Yep. And
also, like, kind of run around blocks. They're not necessarily penetrators in the run game that are just going to be plug fitters, if you will. They're probably more reactionary backers, play over the top of things.
Very cerebral. Yeah.
Yeah, cerebral. Okay, so this is where I found this stat out. I don't know if you read this in my article, and it's just blew my mind. It was on NFL Pro, so it's an NFL Next Gen stat. All right, so this is why I think running the football is going to be so damn important. All right, for Sean Payton, because you run the football, especially from under center. You run outside zone, duo, power, counter, and it sets up the play action game, right? And the play action game, I think we all think that the play action game is lumped in. It's all just shot plays down the field. I'm talking about outside zone from under center and then quarterback naked out the back end of it. That's what Bo Nix does really well when Sean Payton commits to it. And it's the fake toss, out of the bunch look. And then you're out on the perimeter naked. But to make that stuff effective, you've got to run the football. And you got to consistently run the football. You just said it. You gave the answers to the test. McDermott and Babbage. These guys are unbelievable in disguising coverages. Why the hell drop back with Bo Nix? Yeah. It's honestly, the drop back game with Bo Nix has sucked against average.
Throw him into a buzzsaw if you do.
It's not been good. Like, he is a great play action quarterback. In fact, this is the stat that I wanted to read to you. I don't know if you saw it. It's insane. Bo Nix has thrown for a league high 904 yards passing on attempts while he was running faster than 8 miles per hour.
Oh, I did hear you say this on the show today.
Is that not nuts? So that is, like, the 8 miles per hour is a little bit arbitrary, but it's a number.
It means he's not sliding, right?
You're not sliding in the pocket. You're not, like, slow jogging towards the line of scrimmage. It's a break contained throw on the run. Typically, when it's designed, it's off nakeds or sprint action. Whether it be, kind of your faux boundary free access and then roll out with the running back to the same side. So this number that I just gave you, it's basically throw on the run number. That number is the fourth most by a quarterback since 2016. So in an 8-year sample size, and the only quarterback that's had higher number than that was Patrick Mahomes in 2018, 2020, and 2021 when he was at his peak. Okay?
Yeah, no doubt
So
about it.
what does that tell you? Bo Nix is damn good throwing on the run. Damn good.
Well, and so this is what I wanted to ask you about him is he seems to lack the ability to hit those middle depth, I'm talking 10 to 20 yards throws with consistency.
Agreed. From what? From what? Say it.
From under center?
From not running.
Oh,
Not when he's on the move. From the pocket. From the pocket.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask you.
I hate the Broncos. If the Broncos drop back more than 20 times, they get their ass kicked. I'm just going to tell you that. Pure drop back in the pocket. Pure drop back.
And I just think unless you can get over the top on this Bills defense, which most people can't do, you have to hit those 10 to 20 yard throws to really expand the defense a little bit. You know what I mean? And if his average air yards is under 3, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a long day for the Broncos, I think.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do like is this stat that I talk about Bo on the run, right? Bo Nix throwing on the run, is that the Bills defense, all right, they've tied for the most touchdown passes allowed to quarterbacks throwing on the run, which is 10. They tied with the Cincinnati Bengals. So 10 touchdown passes on the move. And that's where I think a combination of Bo Nix from maybe drop back, he does break contain, he finds some action. He makes good out-of-pocket decisions. He did that at Oregon. That was my biggest positive coming out of the combine, was number one. All right, let's see this. This is great.
So it was interesting because I pulled this up for Josh Allen. This is a Josh Allen stat for me, but it goes to your point about Bo. This is perfect coverages faced versus EPA added versus perfect coverage. And I think when you're booting him like that, the way that the defense has to adjust, you're much less likely to see perfect coverage.
Right.
You can see,
put somebody in conflict and run past conflict, right?
Bo Nix, this is -4 EPA. The only quarterback to have a positive is Josh Allen, but percent of perfect coverage is faced. Look, he's in the middle of the pack. And
right.
It's because Sean Payton is so good at scheming that up. I agree with you. I think he's got to scheme stuff like that up against this Bills defense.
Yeah, and that's what I see is but it all goes back to the ability and the hard-headedness to just stick with the run game.
Yeah.
Even if it's yielding like 1 yard. Cool. It's okay. Come back to it.
You should be able to get more than that against the Bills defense. It is designed to stop the pass. They will let you march all the way down the field with the running game, and they will stiffen up in the red zone. They don't care about giving up rushing yards. Their thing is, I want you to go for 3 instead of 7 because I've got a unicorn on the other side who's going to match it with 7. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thought process.
So, Rob, I think we've had some really good discussions on both sides, but I think that insofar as maybe the Broncos stick to their guns with some of the things that at least I believe they should do, and who the hell am I? But I do think that there are some schematic, I'm not going to say advantages, abilities to make this thing a 1-score game deep into the fourth quarter. I believe that to be true. Insofar as Sean can stay to exactly what he needs to do, and Vance Joseph can stay as close to what he can do. I think this can be a 1-score game. And this brings up my most important conversation with you. Right now, the Denver Broncos in games that have been decided by a possession, a touchdown or fewer. Denver Broncos right now have only won 1 game, and they've lost 6 this season with Bo Nix playing quarterback. The Buffalo Bills, on the flip side, they've had 8 opportunities in 1-score games. They've won 5 of them. So 5-3 for Josh Allen. Because really, at the end of the day, what do you define? What do you define by as a quarterback and your legacy? It's how can you win games at the end of the game, right? Can you be the catalyst? Now, are you the only person that's winning or losing the game? Absolutely not. But can you be the catalyst? So my question is to you, and I believe this game's going to come down to the end. What's the confidence level in Josh Allen in the postseason winning a game at the end?
100%.
Yep.
I mean, there might not be another quarterback in the league I'd want more, and I understand.
Get the fuck. Don't make me cuss.
I know you're gonna get angry.
It's
I know
dude.
you're gonna get angry.
That's not even. You can't even debate that.
You can though,
Based off history.
I can show you the history where he's not this killer. He's not Tom Brady.
Who? Mahomes?
In the league right now, he's not Tom Brady, man. There's been more than one time that he has had.
Well, he's not 45.
Not cashed it.
He's not 46. I mean, he didn't do it for 20 years.
But I'm just saying, I don't listen. If you're talking about, you can point to the AFC Championship game versus the Bengals. He had the ball first in overtime.
It's the only time he's lost.
Right. So,
in an AFC champion or in an AFC playoff matchup, right?
I listen. Listen. If you pick Pat Mahomes, I'm not here to tell you you're crazy or anything like that. I'm just saying.
Joe Burrow? Would you take? Because I would argue that the only quarterback right now that stared the witch down the barrel of a gun, and that's staring down Patrick Mahomes, and has conquered it, was a young Joe Burrow.
Okay, that's the common take, and I understand where it comes from, and I wouldn't begrudge anybody taking Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow's defense got to stop. Intercepted the ball, and they were already almost in field goal range. He moved the ball like 15 yards in overtime, and they kicked a field goal to win. Okay, so
fair.
Okay, do you know what Josh Allen did in the 13 seconds game?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so like he has done the same thing. It's just his defense didn't get a stop, and Joe Burrow's did.
Yeah.
So I would argue with you, Josh Allen has looked right down that same barrel and not been afraid of it.
Right. He's almost kind of done the same thing that Bo Nix did in the regular season against Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Where your stat is not. That's why a lot of people argue that quarterback wins is not a stat, right?
Yeah, it's tough. And here's the thing: you brought up the one score game stat. Listen, man, did you watch the Bills game versus the Chiefs? Would you say that was a close game this year?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? It ended up with 9 points and doesn't count as a one-score win for Josh Allen.
Right.
So It's like one of those things where, like, yeah, I trust my guy on 4th and 2 from the 30-yard line. I'm going for it. I'm staring down the witch. And you know what I mean? And I just think some of that gets lost when you look at the stats. And I know we've got to slice it somewhere. You got to delineate it somewhere. But that was a 9-point game, so it doesn't count in your stat. And for me, it's Josh Allen leading a fourth quarter drive to beat Patrick Mahomes and kill the witch. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so if you're talking about, versus Bo Nix in the wild card round of the playoffs, yeah, I'll take my guy over almost anybody else.
What about the pressure and the magnitude? What about the pressure and magnitude of Buffalo and Josh Allen's legacy? Really, I would say hanging in the balance in the postseason.
I mean, it's starting to build on them a little bit. I think a little bit of pressure got relieved with the way that they dumped a whole bunch of guys in the offseason.
And then he went out and balled. Yep.
Yeah, well, not only did he go out and ball, but he was the unquestioned leader of that team. There's only 2 captains on the Bills. Most of these teams have 8, 6, something like that.
Yeah.
There's 2 captains, and he's one of them. Him and Terrell Bernard is the middle linebacker. They're the 2, and that's it. And, he's really taken on that role and went out and played an MVP caliber season. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think the Broncos, I don't think it's out of the question that the Broncos can win this game. I just like my guy. Like, I think he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. And at some point you got to stop making excuses for everybody else on that team. But, 13 seconds, missed field goal last year versus the Chiefs. I mean, it's just been some bad luck that's led to it. So
yeah. Well, it's going to make for a really interesting game. I think what we did here was a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed breaking it. Being able to talk through some of the stuff with you is going to help me watch this game more educated. And I hope a lot of people that tune into this will get the same effect.
Well, you can hear Coach talk about it the rest of the week on the morning sprint with Raj, and then you're doing a pregame show too, Coach, right?
So we're going to be is it called Number 38? I always think Centennial 38 because I'm a Rapids guy, but it's at Number 38. Awesome place there in River North area. It's kind of the Rhino area, I believe.
D-Mac and I think Raj is going to be there too.
Yeah. I think we're doing a pregame show, and then we're trying to get as many people on calling in from the show. From the entire altitude lineup. I'd love to get just kind of a day of game, a little bit of a temperature check, a mood check from our guy, Rob Trigilio. Where are you going to be watching the game?
We have a Bills bar that I started, the Denver Bills backers here.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be there.
What's the bar called?
We'd be happy to.
Oh, it's Stoney's.
Stoney's Uptown.
Oh,
So there's
love
two
Stoney's.
Stoney's. There's Stoney's OG and Stoney's Uptown. We're at Uptown. It's 17th and Downing.
How many Bills fans will be there?
Probably 100, something like that.
We'll be pretty nuts. Just with the fact, will it be even more amped up knowing that it's in Denver and you're kind of it's the us against the world mentality in
Sure, because of course people are going to bring their Bronco friends and then we're going to have.
Oh, it's going to get weird.
Yeah, it's going to get weird. So
let's just hope and pray that it gets weird, not ugly, right?
Right. 100%. As president of it, I hope it gets weird, not ugly.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about
listen, I think the Broncos got a chance to win. They do have to play an underdog game, run the ball, play good defense, get a special teams play, but I don't think the Bills are too overwhelming of a matchup for them, so it should be a fun game on Sunday.
And
any last words before
the last
we get out of here?
When we talked about the final drive and the Broncos being 1-6 against in one score games since Bo Nix has been starting at quarterback, he's had opportunities against Mahomes. He got it done, just didn't get it done. Right, blocked field goal, can't control that. Had a chance against Burrow. Led the drive, just didn't get the chance to go for 2 point to win the game. Right, so that's two of them. Really, Herbert. I felt like you had a shot in the game against the Chargers. It just didn't materialize. So to me, I think that Bo Nix is just ready. He's kind of like knocking on the door, like, Sean, give me the chance. If we're in that position, let me go win this football game. However, I got to run for it, escape the pocket, throw a freaking seed down the field, helicopter my way in like John Elway on a 2-point conversion to win the game. I just have this weird sneaking suspicion, and I hate doing this to you, but I got this weird image of Bo Nix doing this in the fourth quarter or in overtime at Buffalo and becoming the no-brainer third best quarterback in franchise history in his first year for the Denver Broncos. And I just see it happening.
Good take right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, if he does, he will. If you get through any part of this AFC playoff, I mean, these quarterbacks.
The road is insane.
Yeah, quarterbacks across the board are out of this world.
Yep.
I mean, Joe Burrow didn't make the playoffs. I should tell you all you need to know. So, as soon as he gets any kind of win in the playoffs, he's going to elevate himself, and it's going to be interesting. I'll have a terrible week next week. I appreciate you betting on me having an awful week. Your boy there?
Yeah, check it out. Hey, show off the jersey.
Oh, see,
he got his fresh new AG on, so we're going to the Nuggets game.
I love that. All right, get out of here, Coach. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week. We'll do a little breakdown of whatever does end up happening.
It'll be fun, man. Let's do it. We'll do a film breakdown of it. Either way.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. You ready?